The whole idea was using the cockroach as a motif, but really painting it beautifully and intricately. And that was creating a contrast between beauty and grotesque. My name is Tazeen Qayyum, and I am a contemporary visual artist. My work explores issues of identity and belonging, and I tackle these complex issues in a socio-political context. I grew up in various cities of Pakistan because my father was in the military, so we had to move a lot. A lot of my earlier work was feminist issues and women issues. And I worked with a non-government organization working with trafficked women between Pakistan and Bangladesh. So, getting that exposure and experience, I realized that how important my art is to talk about these issues. The National College of Arts is in Lahore. And I looked into it and I realized how prestigious it is, and it's like a century-old school, and it's the place for artists to go to. More than 300 or 400 people apply from one city for this school and only 20 make it. And so I made the list. The entire family was against me going to the art school. But my father said if she has the talent and she was able to make it, then I think she should go. And my experience there was life-changing. If I hadn't gone to National College of Arts, I would not have learned the tradition of miniature painting, because that was the only institute that taught the techniques. Then I became one of the pioneers of the movement that started in the early 1990s on contemporizing that tradition. When I'm drawing or I'm painting, it feels that my entire being is on that tip of that brush at that moment. It's still visible in my art practice. No matter what I do, that training is reflected. I met my husband at the institute, and we got married right after graduation. We moved to Canada in early 2003, which was right after 9/11. And we saw the assault on Afghanistan and Iraq, and my initial response to what we were experiencing was through some paintings that I created. I used the image of a dead cockroach in large numbers to talk about how the value of human life diminishes to that of a pest insect. That's what war and violence does, right? They remove the human aspect. That's the first strategy. Just make them numbers. To me, that also speaking to the quality of resilience and the idea of community building, and how in the face of adversities we need to come together. Then a lot of my paintings were as if these insects are in a display case, or they're in a museum, opened up, cut up, or labeled and pinned for observation and learning. So talking about how cultures or people you don't necessarily understand, you have this tendency to somehow label them immediately, and how the Western societies use the mechanism of fear to understand or to establish narratives. Somewhere in my practice, that cockroach started becoming alive. It was moving in large numbers. Then I started creating patterns with them. From singular painted object, they became a repetitive pattern of movement. Sometimes people ask me, when is this cockroach going to die? I find that funny, and so far I have so much to say through it. There was a point in 2018, around that time, where I started asking a lot of questions, like, why am I doing what I do? What am I trying to say? Who am I? I needed to really take an inward journey. I had already started working on some performances where I would write text, a line or a phrase, and kind of repeatedly write it in a public setting. So I brought that practice to my studio, and what I do is I carefully choose words that are multi-layered in meaning, and I draw them repeatedly for hours at a time. And that entire drawing becomes a journey. We can say it's becomes like a meditation. It takes me to points of sorrows and joy and all that's in between. When I'm drawing those circles, it's my body moving. It's not just my hand. There comes a point my knee starts hurting, my back is hurting. But that endurance becomes as much part of the process. I think the role of an artist is not to provide answers, but to ask the right questions.